My name is Chris, and today we're taking a look at the Denafrips Ares 2 deck. Welcome to the Vinyl Attack. This video is sponsored by OopCube. With a wide array of portable, collapsible, and omni-stackable containers, OopCube also happen to have an excellent solution for those of you looking to store your records in a limited space. Each cube is made from a high-density, heavy-duty polymer that is as rugged as it is sturdy. One pull on the OopCube and you'll immediately know that your records aren't going anywhere, and they're built to last. With additional accessory options to customize your cube as you see fit, such as clear panels that protect your custom designs and labels on the sides and top, to rubberized handles for easier carrying, and even dividers to manage your growing record collection, the OopCubes are able to stack in any orientation for ease of access to your records inside. If you have limited space in your listening room, your office, or even your college dorm room, head over to oopcube.com and check out all of the available options and see what setup might work best for you. Ditch the worn-out, second-hand, beat-up milk crates that you've been hanging on to for far too long and step up to an OopCube. As the name of this show might suggest, my main focus is on the analog side of things, particularly turntables, records, phono preamps, cartridges, and the like. But when Denafrips reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in taking a look at their Ares 2 deck, I figured it'd be a good opportunity to see how the other half lives. Don't get me wrong, I have no quarrel with digitally sourced or created music, and I have a large CD collection that gets regular use in my IOTA VX MP3 network CD player. I'm just not an expert on the digital side of things. While I understand build quality, engineering, and all of the items that go into making an excellent product, I also do not have a Roon account, a laptop to plug into a DAC, and my network streamer is the easy-to-use and all-inclusive Bluesound Node 2i. So then, what can I offer to you, the viewer, in this regard? A couple of different things, actually. I'll still be reviewing the music as I hear it and comparing it to what I hear from my normal sources, and you also get to see more of a feel of what it's like to be newer to the digital side of things if you lack the extensive experience as I do. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the build quality and features of the Denafrips Ares 2. While Denafrips is based in Guangzhou, China, I found that the pricing on their direct-to-consumer website had the Ares 2 listed for sale in Singapore dollars. At the time of this recording, the 1,149 Singapore dollars came out to roughly $830 US. If you're in a different part of the world, you may wish to check the exchange rate before diving in, but I would dare say that this is a solid mid-tier offering. Inside the very unassuming box, you'll find a small piece of foam on top to protect from transport damage, a cutout section of foam in the bottom of the box to house the unit and its included power cable, and that's it. No remote control, no instructions, not even any additional marketing literature to go along with this simplistic, dare I say, economical package. There are indeed instructions available, you'll just need to go to the Denafrips website to download them. I will say that they're quite extensive in their information, being 17 pages long, but overall they're generally easy to understand and they will cover all the topics of which you might be curious. Coming in at just 8.5 inches by 9 inches by 1 3/4 inches, the Ares 2 weighs in at over 7.5 pounds. Quite surprising considering its small stature, but not as surprising when considering the components consisting of the makeup inside. Removing the cover is when you immediately start to see where the monetary investment went with the Ares 2, as its minimalist exterior may be misleading. Starting off by using a linear power supply, as opposed to a switch mode power supply, which is much more common these days, there is a power conditioner with seemingly hand-wrapped coils to reduce unwanted outside electrical noise. There's a massive conglomeration of Nichicon filter caps that aim to filter and balance said power by lowering its impedance. You will of course see the dual ladder configuration of resistors that help give the Ares 2 its unique sound, but something I found even more impressive was its true dual balanced outputs which terminate with an XLR connection. I was unfortunately unable to take advantage of this connection, but it's something I'm certainly aiming to explore in the near future. I really need to get a good set of XLR cables. But perhaps the most obvious and impressive feature when looking under the hood of the Ares 2, and certainly why it weighs what it does, is its O-ring transformer. Utilizing a round shape underneath the hand-wound coils is said to produce less noise than a standard toroid transformer would due to the windings having more even contact surface. Less noise here translates to a better sound, of course, but it also helps to even out the balance of this slightly archaic R2R technology used in this DAC, as opposed to the much more common and cheaper to produce Delta Sigma modulator setup. Without doing a deep dive into the differences of an R2R DAC like the Ares 2 and a Delta Sigma style DAC, I'll simply say that the R2R DACs tend to sound a bit more natural, to my ears anyway, and in the limited experience that I've had with them. Of course, this comes at a cost, as with all things in the audio world, there is always a trade-off. While the Delta Sigma style DAC will certainly produce a sound with less total harmonic distortion, or THD, and greater individual note detail and clarity, especially in the top end, they can also sound a bit more artificial. By using a ladder DAC, an R2R DAC, you won't achieve quite as low a THD, but you will reduce digital noise and artifacts more for a smoother, more analog sound. Is one better than the other? As with all things, that will completely depend upon your tastes. Not surprisingly, I tend to lean towards the ladder DACs. So what kind of numbers are we talking about when it comes to sampling performance? Perhaps moreover, how do I even use this damn thing, and what even is a DAC, just in case you're new to this format? I'll start with a simple question first. A DAC is, quite simply, a digital to analog converter. You take a digital source such as your phone, a laptop, a streaming box, and a host of other possible sources, and you plug it into the DAC, and the sound that comes out on the other side is analog, or as analog as a digital converter can make it. As for what the Ares 2 can produce, well, generally speaking, the higher the number, the better performance and sound, at least in theory anyway. What the human ear can actually perceive is a topic of great debate when it comes to digital audio, but that's a topic for another day, so I'll just give you the numbers anyway so we can move forward. The Ares 2 can produce up to DSD64 or PCM 192 kHz via the coaxial and Toslink connections, but for the extremely impressive numbers, tongue-in-cheek, the DSD 1024 or PCM 1536 kHz, you'll need to make use of the available USB connection. Alas, I was unable to make use of this connection as well. I told you I'm not at the forefront of digital music. The Ares 2 also has a normal sampling mode and oversampling mode. When you're operating at normal mode, you'll get the standard DAC performance as best as capable from your digital source. When turning on the oversampling mode, the PCM 44.1 kHz or 48 kHz based audio data are upsampled to the maximum rate of PCM 1411.2 or PCM 1536. There is no upsampling for DSD audio. If none of that makes any sense to you, don't worry. What you really need to know is that no matter what the source or connection going into this DAC, the sound that comes out is excellent. I could spend the rest of the video talking about the differences between DSD and PCM and what they might mean to you in regards to the Ares 2 and digital audio in general, but instead, I'm simply going to link to a fantastic article on whathifi.com that explains it wonderfully. I'd like to move forward and expand a little bit upon the sound I heard and why I do think it's indeed excellent. Starting out with one of my personal favorites, because I know the album so very well, not to mention the excellent musicianship and recording quality, I put on AC/DC's seminal classic, Back in Black, again. This was done by connecting my Iota VX MP3 networking streaming CD player to the Ares 2 via Toslink connection in the way of an AudioQuest Cinnamon cable. I sometimes still call this a light pipe, so don't be alarmed if that slips out. Using the single-ended RCA outputs on the Denafrips, I connected a pair of AudioQuest Golden Gate interconnects and then ran them into the Rotel RA6000 integrated amplifier, which is in their Diamond series. Review is actually forthcoming. I lived with this setup for a number of days before I started to do any A/B comparisons, but once I did, I found that using the Ares 2 showed an improved bass performance with this disc, specifically with the Fender P-Bass playing of Cliff Williams. The Rotel, on its own, showed a more crisp top end that was more defined and bright, which was pretty much exactly what I was expecting with the sound coming direct from CD. It was a strong performance to be sure, but the Denafrips seemed to warm things up a bit and showed a slightly better soundstage, particularly in the vocal performance. Brian Johnson just sounded a touch more natural to my ear and more even across the mix. Veering away from my standard repertoire of quality recordings, I wanted to try something that was less than perfect. After all, we do not listen to audiophile recordings all the time, and it's just not practical, and quite frankly, I don't think it would be all that fun either. So, I grabbed my original copy of Pride and Glory's self-titled and only release to see if the Ares 2 could tame some of the inherent harshness contained within. Zakk Wylde is in my top 5 favorite guitar players of all time, but this recording is particularly raw even for him. The guitars are loud, brash, and bordering on raucous, with excess finger noise and fret noise throughout. But that's also part of what gives it its charm, at least for me anyway. In the past, I've found this album to be a bit fatiguing, even with just casual listening, so much so that I rarely make it all the way through in one sitting. While the Denafrips didn't perform miracles, the album was indeed far more palatable. Interestingly enough, I felt the bass performance, as in the overall level contained within, seemed to actually drop a little on the Pride and Glory recording as opposed to that of the AC/DC offering. That aside, and not really a detriment, I was able to listen to this disc in its entirety both intently and casually throughout my review. I draw attention to this because I think that we sometimes miss the forest for the trees when listening to music. We focus so much on individual details like soundstage, width, depth, and clarity that we miss the performance as a whole. With the album not sounding as harsh, I was able to enjoy it on a level that I hadn't previously in quite some time, if ever. That was a direct result of using the Ares 2. Deciding to get even more lo-fi than Pride and Glory, I opted for Samhain's freshman release, Initium. While this was a 2001 remaster, they could not hide the original way in which the recording was made. Almost every instrument seems to come right up the center, sans for the toms of the drums, oddly enough. This completely removes a wide soundstage and all the benefits that go along with it. Even though the album wasn't muddy as such, it also wasn't sonically as engaging as most of the music I listen to today, and it's what you would expect from a raw punk rock recording. That said, playing this disc through the Ares 2 did bring about a feeling of nostalgia, as the overall tone reminded me of the cassettes of this band I had when I was young. Certainly, using Rotel amplification through Buchart S400 Mark II speakers elevated the sonic performance to an unprecedented degree for such a band, but the analog sound of my youth came shining through nonetheless when paired with this DAC. But we would expect the Denafrips to perform this way through a relatively expensive amplifier and highly resolving speaker, so what would happen if I changed the parameters a little? To do that, I brought out the Iota VX SA3 into the mix, along with my pair of Q Acoustics 3030i bookshelf speakers. Not necessarily what someone might own when trying to upgrade to an $800 DAC, but a modest comparison that seemed warranted nonetheless. Not surprisingly, there was a much bigger difference when connecting the Denafrips to the Iota VX. While the SA3 is a strong performer in its own right, especially considering the price tag, the built-in DAC just isn't able to produce the sonic results that the Ares can. After all, the Iota is trying to encompass as many quality features as it can for a very reasonable price at which it's offered. But through the Denafrips, vocals had far more presence and air about them. The soundstage was wider overall and had more depth. The holographic presentation went from subtle to pronounced, and minute details that weren't apparent before became obviously so upon connecting the Ares 2 to the system. The instrument placement was simply more accurate and almost luscious in its presentation without missing any of the detail that you would want. On the contrary, there were elements in the music that I could hear with the Ares that I could not hear with the Iota by itself. I would say that if you currently have a moderate setup, you'll definitely see more noticeable results with the Denafrips than that of a system that is more highly resolving. However, even with the robust sound of the Rotel and Buchart in play, the Ares still made a positive improvement for me. But even with these excellent results, were there things about the Denafrips Ares 2 DAC that I didn't particularly care for? There were. While perhaps not an issue for some, or even most, I was a bit put off by the incredibly small LED lights. While they did illuminate enough to show me what was being selected, at off angles and in bright daylight, it became a bit of a chore to see clearly from time to time. To go along with this, making use of the information highlighted by the LEDs is a little more complicated than I would like as well. To see which sampling rates or performance numbers are currently in use, you'll actually have to do some math. For example, when the readout is 44.1 on the left LED and times 1 on the right, it's easy to see that you're clearly in the realm of CD quality playback. Certainly nothing too difficult there. But as the sampling rates increase, you'll need to pay particular attention to the 44.1K, 48K, and the 1X, 2X, 4X, 8X, and even DSD lights on the right-hand side to find out what you're currently making use of with the Denafrips. Hi-fi homework. Of course, to make use of these higher sample rates, at least when it comes to oversampling, you'll need to engage the mode itself. This can also be a tad finicky. To toggle between the non-oversampling mode and sampling modes, you'll need to press the mute button once. This enters the configuration mode. You then quickly press the option 1 button to select which mode you would like. When the option 1 light is on, you are in non-oversampling mode. When the light is off, you are in oversampling mode. Then, after about 5 seconds, these lights turn off and everything displays as normal. The same goes for filter selection, which is only effective in oversampling mode. This time, press the mute button once to enter the configuration mode and press the option 2 button momentarily. With the option 2 LED on, you will have the slow filter. With the option 2 LED off, you will have the sharp filter. No, these aren't terribly complicated to operate, but without having them committed to memory or having the instructions right in front of you, it is easier than you think to forget just how to operate these functions. The last detractor for me was the all-too-common and increasingly frustrating short power cord. If you're going to employ the use of this DAC, you're going to want to make sure that it is near a power outlet, or you'll want to purchase a longer aftermarket cord. No joke. I'm not sure why manufacturers are so persistent on sending out cords that are too damn short with their products, but it really needs to stop. But that's really all the caveats I have with the Ares 2. In the end, I'm really quite glad that I took up Denafrips on their offer to review and spend some time with the Ares 2. I found that I enjoyed the sound quality of not only my CD collection, but also streaming music through my Bluesound Node 2i. I lost none of the detail I was looking for, but gained a sonic performance and analog feel that was incredibly pleasing to my ears, and that's about all I could ask. If you've been thinking about a DAC, and you're not afraid to put down about $800 US to get one, I think you would be very hard-pressed to find a superior model anywhere near this price range. Thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon who help make these videos possible. Thanks to you for stopping by to watch, and I look forward to next time.